Excuse me, sir? The voice was barely a whisper, trembling like a leaf caught in an uncertain breeze. Marcus looked up from his security logbook, his weathered hands pausing mid-sentence. The young woman standing before his desk wore a navy graduation gown that seemed too big for her slender frame. Her eyes, deep brown and glistening with unshed tears, held a vulnerability that pierced straight through his professional composure. "Yes, miss, how can I help you?" he asked gently, instinctively softening his tone. She twisted the tassel of her graduation cap between her fingers, her knuckles white with nervous tension. This is going to sound really strange, but her voice caught. She took a shaky breath, and when she spoke again, the words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Would you be willing to pretend to be my dad, just for the ceremony, just so I don't have to walk across that stage alone? The request hung in the air between them, raw and achingly honest. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, a familiar ache he'd spent 3 years trying to bury. The security guard station at Riverside University was typically quiet on graduation mornings, but today the campus hummed with excitement. Parents arrived in their finest clothes, cameras ready, flowers bundled in their arms. Marcus had worked this post for 15 years, long enough to recognize the bittersweet cocktail of pride and loss that always accompanied these ceremonies, long enough to know that not every graduate had someone waiting in those crowded bleachers. "What's your name?" he asked softly, gesturing to the chair beside his desk. "Eliza Morrison." She sat down carefully, as if she might shatter. "I'm sorry. I know this is weird. I shouldn't have asked. I saw all these families out there, and my mom had to work a double shift at the hospital, and my dad—" Her voice fractured. "My dad died when I was 17, cancer, and I just thought, maybe if someone could just stand with me for the photos, so it doesn't look so empty." Marcus studied her face, the proud set of her jaw fighting against the tremor in her lips, the way she held herself together with visible effort. He recognized that expression. He'd seen it in the mirror every morning for the past 3 years, ever since his wife Sarah had passed away from a sudden heart attack, leaving him alone in a house that echoed with memories. "Eliza," he said quietly, "I would be honored." Her eyes widened, tears finally spilling over. "Really? You would? Really?" He reached across the desk, offering her a tissue from the box he kept for overwhelmed students. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. Then I'm all yours." What Marcus didn't tell her was that he'd been scheduled to speak at this very graduation. Dr. Marcus, retired sociology professor, published author on community building and human connection, and this year's keynote speaker. He'd taken the security job after Sarah died, needing something to fill the endless lonely hours, something that kept him connected to young people, to hope, to the future he and Sarah had always believed in. His supervisor had asked him weeks ago to reveal his identity before the ceremony, to prepare, but Marcus had declined. He preferred the quiet anonymity of his uniform, the simple interactions that came with checking IDs and directing lost parents to the auditorium. It felt honest, real, uncomplicated by expectations. The ceremony began at 10. Marcus changed from his security uniform into the simple dark suit he'd brought, leaving his name badge behind. He found Eliza waiting near the graduate assembly area, her hands clasped so tightly her fingernails left small crescents in her palms. "You came," she breathed, relief flooding her features. "I gave you my word," Marcus said simply. He offered her his arm. "Shall we?" They sat together in the family section, surrounded by proud parents and grandparents, siblings with bouquets and smartphones held high. Marcus noticed the way Eliza's shoulders gradually relaxed, the way she leaned slightly toward him when the university president began welcoming everyone to the ceremony. My dad loved university traditions, she whispered during a pause in the speech. He used to teach high school history. He'd get so excited about academic regalia, the meaning behind different hood colors. He would have worn a tie with tiny graduation caps on it today, something dorky and wonderful. Marcus smiled, a lump forming in his throat. My wife was the same way. She taught elementary school for 30 years. Every graduation season, she'd get misty-eyed watching the kids move up to the next grade. She believed education was the greatest gift we could give. Eliza turned to look at him, really look at him, and something shifted in her expression, a recognition of shared grief, of understood loss. The keynote speaker was announced. Marcus felt Eliza stiffen beside him as the university president began reading the biography. Our speaker today is a distinguished professor emeritus who has dedicated his life to studying the bonds that connect us across generations and circumstances. Dr. Marcus has authored 4 books on community, kindness, and the small acts that change lives. After the loss of his beloved wife 3 years ago, Dr. Marcus took an unexpected path, choosing to serve our university community in a different capacity. Eliza's head whipped toward him, her mouth falling open in shock. Marcus met her eyes, seeing the confusion, the dawning realization, the questions flooding through her mind. He stood slowly, squeezing her hand once before making his way to the stage. When he reached the podium, he didn't immediately begin his prepared speech. Instead, he looked out at the sea of graduates, at the proud families, at Eliza sitting in stunned silence. I was asked to speak today about connection, about the small moments that bridge the distances between us, about how we find family not just in blood, but in kindness offered and received. He paused, letting his gaze settle on Eliza. This morning, a brave young woman asked me to stand beside her today. She thought I was just a security guard, someone with time to spare and a kind face. What she didn't know was that she gave me a gift far greater than the one she thought she was asking for. Eliza's hand rose to cover her mouth, tears streaming freely now. 3 years ago, I lost my wife. 2 years ago, my son, overwhelmed by his own grief and unable to face the memories our home held, moved across the country. We speak rarely. Our pain built walls between us instead of bridges. I've spent these years working quietly, trying to stay connected to purpose while feeling utterly disconnected from the family I had left. His voice roughened, but he pressed on. Today, a stranger trusted me with her vulnerability. She let me stand in a space sacred to her, reserved for the father who couldn't be here. And in doing so, she reminded me what my life's work has always taught, that we are not meant to walk alone through our most important moments, that asking for help isn't weakness, it's the bravest form of connection we have.
The auditorium was utterly silent, except for the soft sounds of people reaching for tissues. Graduates, you're entering a world that often tells you to be independent, self-sufficient, to need no one. But I'm here to tell you that our greatest strength lies in our willingness to reach out, to ask, to offer, to stand beside someone, even when, especially when, we don't have to. After the ceremony, after the diplomas were distributed and caps thrown skyward, Marcus found Eliza in the crowd. She launched herself toward him, and he caught her in a tight embrace. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked against his shoulder. "Because then you would have seen Dr. Marcus, keynote speaker, not just Marcus, someone who understood what it feels like to want your father beside you on your big day." He pulled back, holding her at arm's length. "My son, his name is David. He graduated from medical school 5 years ago. I wasn't there. We'd stopped talking by then, both too stubborn, too hurt to reach out first." "I'm so sorry," Eliza whispered. "You've given me something today, Eliza. You've shown me that it's never too late to be the father who shows up, to make that call, to build that bridge. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And if your mother is working right now, someone should celebrate with you properly. Would you let me take you to lunch? Let me hear about your plans, your dreams. Let me be proud of you, the way your dad would have been." Eliza nodded, unable to speak through her tears. They went to a small diner near campus, the kind with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone honey. Over burgers and milkshakes, Eliza told him about her father, about his terrible jokes and his patient teaching style, about how he'd never missed a single one of her school plays, even when he was sick. Marcus told her about Sarah, about her infectious laugh, and her conviction that every person deserved to be seen, truly seen. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus asked as they finished their meal. "What's next for Eliza Morrison, college graduate?" "I got accepted into a graduate program for social work," she said, a shy pride coloring her voice. "I want to help families like mine, families dealing with loss, with medical bills, with all the impossible logistics of grief while trying to keep living." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Your father would be so incredibly proud." "Would you—" Eliza hesitated. "Would you maybe want to stay in touch? I know that's probably weird, but today it helped, having you there. And it sounds like maybe it helped you too?" Marcus reached across the table, covering her hand with his weathered one. "I would like that very much." That evening, Marcus sat in his quiet living room, Eliza's graduation program open on his lap. He picked up his phone, the same phone that had sat silent for so many months, and pulled up David's number. His fingers trembled as he typed, "I've missed you, son. I'm ready to listen if you're ready to talk. No more walls, just a father who wants his son back in his life." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. Marcus answered, his voice breaking slightly. "David." "Dad." The word carried oceans of pain and hope. They talked for 2 hours, tears and apologies flowing freely, both men finally brave enough to be vulnerable. When they hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness for a long moment, Sarah's photo on the mantel catching the moonlight. "She asked me to be her father today, and somehow, in saying yes to her, I remembered how to be a father to our son. You always said kindness ripples outward in ways we can't predict. You were right, love. You were always right." 2 weeks later, Marcus received a card in the mail. Inside was a photo from graduation, him and Eliza, both beaming, his arm around her shoulders like it belonged there. On the back, in careful handwriting, she'd written, "Thank you for showing up when I needed someone. Thank you for letting me help you remember that it's never too late to show up for the people we love. You gave me more than a photo. You gave me hope that kindness still exists in unexpected places. Love always, Eliza." Marcus placed the photo on his mantel, right beside Sarah's picture. 3 frames now, his wife, his new friend, and the empty space where he hoped David's photo would soon sit. Kindness, he'd learned, doesn't always look like grand gestures or planned interventions. Sometimes it's just saying yes when someone asks for help. Sometimes it's letting yourself be helped in return. Sometimes it's a stranger in a security guard uniform choosing to stand beside you and discovering that in standing beside her, he had found his way back to standing beside his own son. The greatest acts of love often begin with the smallest offer, "I'll be there." And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.